I don't understand that she says that.
Hi, team. Welcome back to the only channel that breaks through the hype and gets down to the real truth off camera. Today, we start a story like no other. A story of quiet. A story of courage. A story that might finally break the illusion of Kody Brown's so-called family dream. Because sometimes the loudest person in the room is not the one yelling, pointing, or crying crocodile tears. Sometimes it is the quiet, the pause, the refusal to play ball end. That is precisely what Meri Brown did. Years she was ignored, pushed to the side, branded background scenery in Kody's crazy kingdom. Followers ridiculed her for remaining, for tolerating the emotional abandonment, for clinging to a fantasy that was shattered years ago. She was the first wife, the one Kody confessed he didn't feel married to anymore, the one Robyn sympathized with publicly while belittling behind her back. But what Kody didn't count on, what Robyn didn't anticipate, was that Meri's silence would become her weapon. And when the courtroom lights flickered on, when the gavel came down, when the lies finally met the truth, Meri didn't need to scream. She didn't need to argue. She just had to let Kody speak. And that's when it all began to unravel. Let's rewind. To grasp the strength of Meri's silence, we must turn back the clock to the early seasons of Sister Wives. Kody marketed the world on unity, on faith, on a plural family that worked in unison, prayed in unison, and sacrificed in unison. He taught us about leadership, responsibility, and trust. He wanted us to think his dream was something other than the dysfunction of other polygamous families we'd watched on television or read about in the newspapers. But notice well, even from season 1, you could witness it, Meri's quietness. When Kody roared with too much laughter, when Robyn swooped in with her sweet voice, when Christine smiled nervously during tension, when Janelle questioned sensibly, Meri sat back, quiet, alert, absorbing everything. Silence is not weakness. It is memory. It is observation. And Meri was detailing all the broken promises, all the financial slights, all the manipulations. Fast forward 10 years. The family is broken. Christine has left. Janelle has fractured. Even the editing of TLC can't hide the cracks anymore. Kody and Robyn are standing alone in their fortress, holding onto a tale nobody is buying. And Meri, she doesn't shout. She doesn't throw tantrums. She doesn't even fight for camera time. She just withdraws. And in that process, she lets Kody show himself. The legal tempest descended, like a lightning bolt. Christine and Janelle filed their civil case. Breach of fiduciary duty, emotional cruelty, unjust enrichment. Court papers flowed, payments from family traditions, LLC deposits into KN Fair Holdings. Contracts diverted to Robyn. The courtroom became where Kody's fabrications at last were confronted with the one thing he couldn't manage. Proof, and through it all, there was Meri not as a plaintiff, not as a co-conspirator, but as a silent witness, a woman who had lived it all, suffered it all, and now possessed the ability to simply not speak. Because here is the truth. Silence makes liars nervous. Court transcript dramatized from insider accounts. Judge: Mrs. Brown, you have been identified in these financial documents. Do you have a statement you care to make at this time, Meri? No, Your Honor. Not a word. Not a defense. Not even an explanation. She knew Kody would fill the void. He always does. And when he did, when he launched into another tirade about loyalty, betrayal, and his so-called crown, the silence behind him became deafening. Because the jury wasn't watching Meri's silence as weakness. They were seeing it for what it was: restraint, dignity, a refusal to play his game. And this is where our story begins. The case of Brown v. Brown was already a financial reckoning. Christine and Janelle had their documents. Mindy Jessup had her testimony. The numbers told a damning story, but Meri's silence added something the spreadsheets couldn't: credibility. For every time Kody raised his voice, Meri stayed calm. For every time Robyn sobbed into her tissue, Meri sat still. For every excuse, every "I'm the victim," every self-pitying speech, Meri's refusal to bite gave the jury a contrast they couldn't ignore. It wasn't about what Meri said. It was about what she didn't say. And in that silence, the real story began to emerge. Crew, let's set the stage. Over the next chapters, we'll uncover how Meri's silence forced Kody to overexpose himself, the financial details she refused to defend, leaving Kody cornered. The emotional fallout when even Robyn realized the silence was louder than her tears, and the shocking twist that Meri's silence wasn't just restraint. It was strategy. Because in the end, silence isn't empty. It's full of answers. And by the time this courtroom drama reaches its final act, we'll all be asking the same question. Did Meri just deliver the quietest, most devastating blow in sister wives history? Stay with me, because this is only the beginning. Day 2 of Brown v. Brown opened with the sort of tension that filled your chest. The jury had entered. The judge polished his glasses, and lawyers readied their folders. But all attention, once more, moved to one corner of the room. Meri said nothing. She did not squirm uncomfortably. She did not even blink when Kody entered, his jaw clenched, eyes sweeping the room as a general would storm into war. But her quiet, it resonated in the courtroom more loudly than any of his dramatic entrances. Kody's defense attorney, Mr. Croft, rose and made yet another try at reframing the story. He paced, his voice with saccharine, toned rehearsed empathy. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," he said, "what you're witnessing here isn't fraud. It isn't betrayal. It's a family breakup. A messy one, yes, but one born of personal disagreements, not legal misconduct." He pointed toward Kody. "My client is a man who tried to build a dream, a man whose every decision was for the good of his family. Mistakes, of course, but fraud, never." Kody nodded along, eyes narrowing at Christine and Janelle across the aisle, and for a moment, it looked like the defense might find some footing. But then, silence. Meri's silence. She didn't nod. She didn't turn away. She didn't even react to the speech. And that non-reaction screamed louder than words ever could. Because when a man like Kody swears he is telling the truth, but even the lady who knows him better than anyone else won't vouch for him. The jury takes notice. Then there was the testimony. The attorney for the plaintiffs, Miss Anna Sharma, was ruthless. She threw bank transactions up on the screen. Line upon line, dollar upon dollar. Family Traditions LLC to KN Fayer Holdings. TLC payouts into Robyn's account. Luxury furniture payments, while Janelle was informed she couldn't afford a foundation on her home. And with each disclosure, Kody fidgeted. He growled at his attorney. But Meri, she remained speechless, watching absorbing, and the silence only became more oppressive when Miss Sharma looked at her. Court transcript dramatized from insider sources. Miss Sharma, Mrs. Brown, you were a member of Family Traditions LLC, as listed. Did you authorize these transfers? Meri, Judge, Mrs. Brown, you can answer. Meri, I don't remember authorizing them. That was all. No defending Kody, no trying to gloss over the discrepancies. Just a steady, cool admission she didn't authorize. And the quiet following her response lingered in the air like a storm cloud. Kody, unable to hold back, leaned forward, his tone cutting. "Kody, she doesn't remember because it wasn't her fault. It was mine. I did the business. She had faith in me." But here's the problem. Kody didn't understand the power of contrast. His raised voice, his defensive tone, his desperation to control the narrative, it all clashed with Meri's calm. The more he ranted, the more credible her silence became. The jury wasn't seeing a strong patriarch. They were seeing a man unraveling. Christine and Janelle, seated at their table, exchanged the smallest glance, a glance that said, "He's doing it to himself." And Meri, she stayed quiet. That is when Miss Sharma hit again. "Mrs. Brown, when you were advised that the family couldn't possibly construct on Coyote Pass, did you think that was so?" Meri hesitated. The room waited. Then, yes. Why? Another hesitation. Another silence taut as a pulled wire. "Meri, because that is what I was advised. No anger, no accusation, just fact." And in those 6 words, everything was said. She trusted him. And it wasn't true. The silence that followed was deafening. Crew. This is the brilliance of silence. While Christine and Janelle wielded documents and accountants, while Robyn dabbed her eyes and begged for sympathy, Meri's quiet presence became the one thing Kody couldn't explain away. He could argue with Christine. He could mock Janelle. He could sob with Robyn. But he couldn't undo Meri's silence. Because silence, in that courtroom, was agreement with the truth. And that's when Kody made his biggest mistake. As the session drew to a close, with reporters writing down notes and the jury leaving. Kody leaned in too far over the microphone before him and whispered into it words that resonated throughout the entire courtroom recording system. They only win if she stays quiet. All heads whipped around, all jurors' eyes slit, because in trying to dismiss Meri's silence, he confirmed what everyone suspected, that silence was power. That silence was truth. That silence was the weapon he feared most. And for the first time, Robyn's tears dried up. Even she looked shaken, crew. This was just day 2. The financials had been laid bare. The silence had already become louder than the shouting, and the cracks in Kody's defense were no longer cracks. They were fractures splitting wide open. But the real bombshell, that was still to come, because tomorrow's witness wouldn't just confirm the lies. They'd drag them into the light in a way that even Kody couldn't shout down. And Meri's silence, it would only make the explosion louder. The third day morning was chilly. Reporters stood outside the courthouse, milling in coats, cameras focusing on the door. Within, the atmosphere was charged, because everyone knew who was on the stand today. The nanny, the niece, the ultimate insider, Mindy Jessup. And if Christine and Janelle's paperwork was the skeleton of the case, Mindy's testimony was the heartbeat. When she entered the courtroom, the atmosphere changed. Not flashy, not dramatic, just heavy. She wasn't dressed like a television star. No dramatic makeup, no designer clothes, just a gray blazer, hair pulled back, and a face that was nervous but determined. Robyn's head jerked down the moment she walked in. Kody had his jaw clamped, face red before a single question was even asked. But Meri, she remained quiet, unflappable. Her gaze never wavering from the witness stand. Court transcript dramatized from insider sources. Ms. Sharma, please state your full name for the record. Mindy Alice Jessup. Ms. Sharma. Miss Jessup, how are you related to the defendants, Kody and Robyn Brown? Mindy, Robyn is my aunt. I also have the same father as her 3 older kids, Dayton, Aurora, and Brianna. I've been both family and employee. The jury leaned forward. Ms. Sharma, can you explain to the court the nature of your employment? Mindy, I was the nanny. From late 2019 through mid-2022, 5 or 6 days a week, 8 to 10 hours, per Dalton Y. And suddenly the courtroom understood this wasn't a stranger passing through. This wasn't an angry outsider. This was a person who lived within the confines of Kody and Robyn's home. The questions began simply: compensation. Method of payment, $80,000 annually, Mindy replied. Paid every 2 weeks by KN Fair Holdings. The jury wrote furiously. Christine and Janelle froze, staring at her. Robyn went white, but it was Kody who could not hold it in. His jaw only grew tighter with each response. And what about Meri? Unspeaking, observant, aware. Then the revelation bomb was tossed. Miss Sharma, Miss Jessup, while you were living with the Browns, did you ever hear Kody and Robyn talking about the other wives? Christine and Janelle in particular? Mindy paused, glanced at the judge. He nodded. Yes, she said after a moment. Often. Do you remember one in particular? Mindy breathed in. There was one time, fall of 2020. Christine had been calling about Isabel's surgery. Kody was pacing, angry. He said, she is not the head of this family. I am. She doesn't get to dictate my schedule. And Robyn said, she is using Isabel's pain to manipulate you. If you give in, they'll all think they can summon you. The room came to a standstill. The jury's pens froze. Christine cried. Janelle glared straight ahead. Fists nodded. And Kody, his red face. But Meri, quiet, composed. Her face immobile. And that quiet hurt worse than any words. Because quiet in that moment was not neutrality. It was affirmation. The jury witnessed it. They witnessed a woman who might have spoken up for him, who might have shaken her head, denied it, watered it down. But she didn't. And Kody knew it. That is why he lost it. Objection, he barked, jumping up before his lawyer could catch him. This is hearsay. This is manipulation. The judge hammered down the gavel. Mr. Brown, sit down. You are out of order. But the damage was done. Kody had exposed his temper, his desperation, and Meri's silence only served to make his outburst more dramatic. Then came the second shocker. Miss Sharma, Miss Jessup, did you ever see financial records within the home? Mindy nodded. Yes, They weren't careful. I saw bank statements. Fair Holdings had big balances, transfers from family traditions, LLC TLC payments. And what did Kody and Robyn refer to this account as? Mindy swallowed. They referred to it as their nest egg. Christine's attorney leaned in. Did they tell you it was the family's nest egg? Mindy shook her head. Number, they said, our nest egg. The silence that followed was oppressive. And in that silence, every juror looked at Meri. She didn't speak. She didn't deny it. She didn't flinch. And once again, her silence became louder than Kody's lies. Crew. This is where it shifted. Christine and Janelle had laid the financial groundwork, but Mindy's testimony, paired with Meri's silence, stripped Kody bare because silence in the face of lies doesn't just expose the liar, it validates the truth. And in that instant, Meri wasn't the forgotten wife. She wasn't the throwaway character. She was the witness, the one whose silence was more powerful than all of Kody's yelling. But here is the kicker. Mindy wasn't finished. Because next, she would reveal something even more incriminating. Not about money, but about loyalty. About how Kody and Robyn used the pandemic as a weapon. And with that testimony looming near, Kody was shaken. Robyn actually cried for once, and Meri still remained quiet, but her silence was going to destroy them utterly. By day 4, the courtroom wasn't only tense, it was split. On one side, Christine and Janelle sat firm, their attorney Anna Sharma carefully piling folders like weapons waiting to be fired. Their fans packed the gallery, arms folded, lips pressed tight, anticipating justice. On the opposite end, Kody sagged low, shoulders bunched up with anger he could hardly keep in check. Robyn wiped her eyes with tissues, mascara smudged, sobs so piercing they cut through the stillness, and between them, Meri quietly sitting there. Still, a woman who had nothing to lose by not saying a word, but everything to gain by remaining silent. This was the day COVID broke into the trial. We'd all seen it on television. Kody's infamous list of rules taped to refrigerators, his long rants about germs, his refusal to see his children because they weren't safe. But what the cameras didn't show, and what Mindy Jessup was about to testify, was the hypocrisy that shredded families apart. Court transcript dramatized from insider sources. Ms. Sharma, Ms. Jessup, you worked in the Brown household during the peak of the COVID-19 pandemic? Mindy, yes, every day. Ms. Sharma, did you know about the rules Mr. Brown established for the family? Mindy, yes, they were put into writing. On the fridge, no visitors, no outside interaction. Groceries sanitized, mail quarantined. And were they followed? Mindy paused, glanced at the jury, then nodded. Yes, for Christine, for Janelle, for their children, very strictly. And for Robyn's family. The courtroom fell silent. Mindy's voice didn't waver. Her parents came over. Her sister with her children. They hugged. They had dinners together, unmasked. Gasps ran through the gallery. Christine lowered her head. Janelle closed her eyes. And Kody, his face grew red. But Meri, not a word. Watching, allowing the truth to echo louder than anything she might speak. The attorney continued. Miss Jessup, did you know Mr. Brown declined to go to Isabel Brown's surgery during this same time? Yes. And did you hear the defendants talking about this choice? Yes. Please recount to the court what you heard. Mindy swallowed hard. Robyn told Christine she was playing Kody with Isabel's surgery, and Kody said yes. He said it was a power play. He turned off his phone after that. The silence that followed was crushing. Christine's face puckered and tears streamed down her cheeks. Janelle clamped her hand under the table. And the jury, they glared at Kody in incredulity, and at Meri with hope. Would she stand up for him? Would she shatter the silence? She didn't. She sat in sunlit shafts of gold coming through the tall windows of the courtroom, her lips clamped tight, her eyes serene, and that silence shouted the truth, louder than Mindy's words. Kody couldn't help himself. Her lying, he bellowed, pounding a fist on the table. That never occurred. The gavel of the judge cracked. Mr. Brown, please sit down. Another outburst and you'll be held in contempt. Robyn was clinging to his arm, tears streaming down her face, whispering, Stop, just stop. But Kody didn't stop. He glared at Meri. You know the truth, he snarled. Why don't you say something? The courtroom came to a standstill, all eyes upon her, but Meri didn't respond. She didn't move. Her silence turned into a mirror, reflecting his desperation, his fear, his falling apart. And in that instant, the jury wasn't listening to his words. They were listening to her silence. Crew. That is what silence does. Because when somebody who has nothing to lose won't come to your defense, it speaks louder than any charge. And Kody understood it. That is why he gazed at her like a drowning man pleading for air. That is why Robyn wept more intensely, feeling that even her own tears would be unable to temper the blow. Meri was not Christine. Meri was not Janelle. Meri was not struggling. She remained quiet, and that silence was condemning. By the end of the day, the jurors' faces told the story. Their pens moved slower, their eyes lingered longer on Kody's outbursts, on Robyn's tears, on Meri's silence. They weren't just witnesses to financial fraud anymore. They were witnesses to a man unraveling, a marriage crumbling, and a family fractured by lies. And tomorrow, the closing arguments would begin. Kody's attorney would attempt to position him as a victim. Christine and Janelle's attorney would pound every inconsistency. But it wasn't attorneys who had the power. It was the quiet woman in the middle of the whirlwind, Meri Brown. And the verdict. It was impending. The fifth day started with rumors. Reporters filled the courthouse steps, their breath misting in the chill morning air. Inside, every seat was occupied. Today wasn't about witnesses. It wasn't about documents or bank records. Today was about words, choice words, honed like knives, closing arguments. And in trials such as this, closing arguments are not speeches. They're the last shot to sear an image into the jury's brain. Christine and Janelle's attorney knew that. Kody's attorney knew it too. And so did Mari. The judge slammed his gavel. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll hear closing arguments prosecution. You may begin. Anna Sharma stood, her black blazer sharp, her voice steady but slicing. She did not gesture at Christine or Janelle. She did not scream. She did not stage. She started with the soft fact for years. She said, these women were instructed to sacrifice. They were instructed the family dream was worth their suffering. They were instructed that there wasn't enough money, that their needs would have to wait, that loyalty equaled silence. And all the while, the defendants were constructing a different existence, a hidden existence. The jury leaned in. Sharma held up a folder. We've presented you with documents, transfers from family traditions to KN Fair Holdings. We've presented you with deposits, hundreds of thousands of dollars. We've presented you with contracts, TLC money, laundered into one house, one wedding, one dream. And we've presented you with how the others were left with nothing at all but promises. But this isn't about money. This is about trust, about a father who referred to his daughter's surgery as a manipulation, about a husband who used a pandemic as a tool to separate wives and children, about a man who said that he was the victim of betrayal, when in fact, he was the betrayer. Her voice hardened. And what has Robyn provided us with? Tears. Tears that won't alter receipts. Tears that won't eradicate testimony. Tears that can't be used to undo the truth. She pointed to Christine and Janelle. My clients are not seeking sympathy. They are seeking justice. Justice for the funds stolen. Justice for the emotional distress caused. Justice for years of lies presented as love. Then she faced, for the first time, Meri. And even in this courtroom, through every testimony, through every lie, through every tear, one person has spoken volumes without saying a word. Meri Brown. Her silence tells the truth. She does not defend him. She does not deny the lies. Her silence is confirmation. Her silence is strength. And her silence is why you must find for the plaintiffs. The courtroom was paralyzed. Meri didn't flinch. She didn't move. But the jury did. Their eyes darted to her. Individually, and in that instant, Anna Sharma had painted the snapshot. Kody flush, faced Robyn in tears. Meri mute. Silence deafening than lies. Then the defense. Silas Croft stood, as slick as always, his tie adjusted, his smile serene. He laughed first, attempting to break the somberness. Ladies and gentlemen, we've heard a lot of stories this week. Stories about secret accounts, stories about manipulation, stories about villains and victims. But let's remember, this isn't a movie. This is a family. Families fight. Families disagree. Families break apart. He walked slowly across the courtroom. My clients, Kody and Robyn Brown, are not felons. They are human beings. They've been dragged through the mud by bitter exes, scorned spouses, and a niece who has an axe to grind. Do you really think that every penny spent was fraudulent? Do you really think every choice was nefarious? Or was it complicated, messy, painful, like every divorce? He nodded towards Kody, who sat rigid, his face tense. Kody Brown wasn't perfect. He is messed up, but he loved his family. He sacrificed for his family. He attempted to keep together something most people couldn't even begin to envision maintaining, and now he is being penalized for it. He addressed the jury, speaking in a softer tone. Don't be fooled by tears and silence. Look at the evidence. Look at the intent. This isn't fraud. This isn't cruelty. This is heartbreak. And heartbreak shouldn't be in a courtroom. But the issue was this. The jury had seen the evidence. They had heard the tears. They had witnessed the silence. And Kody's angry rants hadn't done any good. Neither had Robyn's crying and Meri's silence. It had become the loudest testimony of all. The judge banged the gavel again. The jury will now deliberate. The jurors stood and filed out, carrying binders, notes, and the weight of 5 days of truth, lies, and silence. Kody sat back, arms crossed, muttering to himself. Robyn clutched a tissue so hard it tore in her hands. Christine and Janelle held each other's hands under the table. And Meri, she was sitting still as a statue. Silent, a pale shimmer of daylight illuminating her face as if she were chiseled out of stone because she knew what was coming. Crew, the jury would not be gone all that long, because occasionally, the truth doesn't take days to reveal. Occasionally, it takes merely minutes, and when they returned, the quiet in that courtroom would be crushing. The question was, would Kody weather it? 48 minutes. That's all it took. For a case this heavy, with bank records, TLC contracts, nanny salaries, and emotional testimony, you'd expect the jury to deliberate for days, but they didn't. They were gone less than an hour. And when they filed back into the courtroom, their faces were carved in stone. Kody saw first. His knee jerked, his jaw set, his lips working silently with curses. Robyn grasped his arm as if it were the only thing holding her to the floor. Christine and Janelle caught their breath, and Meri, silence, stillness. A golden beam of sunlight streaming from the high courtroom windows slashed across her shoulders. Like a spotlight, she did not move. The judge cleared his throat. Madam Foreperson, has the jury reached a verdict? A middle-aged woman stood, paper clutched in hand. We have, Your Honor. Please read the findings. The courtroom leaned in. All eyes were on the paper, shaking very slightly in the hands of the juror. On the count of breach of fiduciary duty, she hesitated, gazed straight at Kody. We find for the plaintiffs. Christine's lips trembled. Janelle gave her hand a squeeze under the table. Robyn sobbed. Kody growled. No, 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 no. On the count of unjust enrichment. For the plaintiffs. A ripple of whispers ran through the gallery, the sound of justice finally coming. And on the count of intentional infliction of emotional distress. The juror's voice was steady. For the plaintiffs. The words shattered like thunder. Christine's tears streamed free. Janelle closed her eyes, exhaling a breath she'd held for so long. Robyn wept into her tissue, shoulders shaking. And Kody, he exploded. This is a farce. You don't know what it means to be a man, to bear a crown. His voice broke, fists pounding the table. The judge's gavel came down hard. Order, Mr. Brown, calm down. Silence deafening, then lies. Then the defense. Silas Croft stood, as slick as always, his tie adjusted, his smile serene. He laughed first, attempting to break the somberness. Ladies and gentlemen, we've heard a lot of stories this week. Stories about secret accounts. Stories about manipulation. Stories about villains and victims. But let's remember, this isn't a movie. This is a family's fight. Families disagree. Families break apart. He walked slowly across the courtroom. My clients, Kody and Robyn Brown, are not felons. They are human beings. They've been dragged through the mud by bitter exes, scorned spouses, and a niece who has an axe to grind. Do you really think that every penny spent was fraudulent? Do you really think every choice was nefarious? Or was it complicated, messy, painful like every divorce? He nodded towards Kody, who sat rigid, his face tense. Kody Brown wasn't perfect. He is messed up, but he loved his family. He sacrificed for his family. He attempted to keep together something most people couldn't even begin to envision maintaining, and now he is being penalized for it. He addressed the jury, speaking in a softer tone. Don't be fooled by tears and silence. Look at the evidence. Look at the intent. This isn't fraud. This isn't cruelty. This is heartbreak, and heartbreak shouldn't be in a courtroom. But the issue was this. The jury had seen the evidence. They had heard the tears. They had witnessed the silence. And Kody's angry rants hadn't done any good. Neither had Robyn's crying and Meri's silence. It had become the loudest testimony of all. The judge banged the gavel again. The jury will now deliberate. The jurors stood and filed out, carrying binders, notes, and the weight of 5 days of truth, lies, and silence. Kody sat back, arms crossed, muttering to himself. Robyn clutched a tissue so hard it tore in her hands. Christine and Janelle held each other's hands under the table. And Meri, she was sitting still as a statue, silent, a pale shimmer of daylight illuminating her face as if she were chiseled out of stone, because she knew what was coming. Crew, the jury would not be gone all that long, because occasionally, the truth doesn't take days to reveal. Occasionally, it takes merely minutes. And when they returned, the quiet in that courtroom would be crushing. The question was, would Kody weather it? 48 minutes, that's all it took. For a case this heavy, with bank records, TLC contracts, nanny salaries, and emotional testimony, you'd expect the jury to deliberate for days. But they didn't. They were gone less than an hour. And when they filed back into the courtroom, their faces were carved in stone. Kody saw first. His knee jerked, his jaw set, his lips working silently with curses. Robyn grasped his arm as if it were the only thing holding her to the floor. Christine and Janelle caught their breath, and Meri silence, stillness. A golden beam of sunlight streaming from the high courtroom windows slashed across her shoulders. Like a spotlight, she did not move. The judge cleared his throat. Madam Foreperson, has the jury reached a verdict? A middle-aged woman stood, paper clutched in hand. We have, Your Honor. Please read the findings. The courtroom leaned in. All eyes were on the paper, shaking very slightly in the hands of the juror. On the count of breach of fiduciary duty. She hesitated, gazed straight at Kody. We find for the plaintiffs. Christine's lips trembled. Janelle gave her hand a squeeze under the table. Robyn sobbed. Kody growled. No, 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 no. On the count of unjust enrichment. For the plaintiffs. A ripple of whispers ran through the gallery, the sound of justice finally coming. And on the count of intentional infliction of emotional distress. The juror's voice was steady. For the plaintiffs. The words shattered like thunder. Christine's tears streamed free. Janelle closed her eyes, exhaling a breath she'd held for so long. Robyn wept into her tissue, shoulders shaking. And Kody, he exploded. This is a farce. You don't know what it means to be a man, to bear a crown. His voice broke, fists pounding the table. The judge's gavel came down hard. Order, Mr. Brown, calm down.